The auction hall in Serenity Creek was thick with the smells of sweat, desperation, and cheap whiskey. Rancher Jedediah Stone felt out of place. He stood at the back, his weathered hands turning the brim of his hat, watching the grim procession. The year 1887 had been cruel. The railroads had finished laying their tracks, leaving thousands of Chinese laborers with no work and no way home. Now, desperate men, and even children, were being contracted out for pennies a day to mines, farms, and anyone with coin to spare. At 45, Jedediah owned one of the largest cattle ranches in the foothills of the Sierras. But the sprawling homestead was silent, the grand house empty of laughter. His wife, Eleanor, had endured 15 years of heartache, each barren season carving deeper lines of sorrow into her face. The ranch hand's whispers followed him like a shadow. A man who builds an empire with no son to inherit it is a failure. The foreman's shout broke his reverie. Next! A girl. Barely 14, but she's worked the laundries and the fields. Strong for her size. Healthy teeth. Jedediah looked up. A Chinese girl, no bigger than a reed, was shoved onto the wooden platform. Her black hair was a tangled mat, her tunic patched beyond recognition. She was painfully thin, with hollow cheeks and a weariness that didn't belong on a child. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They weren't empty or broken. They were sharp, intelligent, and they swept across the room with a frightening intensity, assessing every face, every shadow, every possible escape. Bidding starts at $20 for a 2-year contract, the foreman barked. 25, called a gruff voice. Jedediah recognized Silas Croft, a foreman from the Black Mountain Mine, a man known for working his laborers into early graves. 30, another voice countered. Before he had even formed the thought, Jedediah found himself stepping forward, his own voice cutting through the noise. $40. A hush fell over the hall. $40 was a fortune for contract labor, more than the girl could earn in 4 years. The foreman's eyes gleamed with avarice. $40 from Mr. Stone. Do I hear 45? The silence held. No one in Serenity Creek bid against Jedediah Stone when his jaw was set like that. Sold. To Mr. Stone for $40. As Jedediah walked to the front to sign the papers, he met the girl's gaze. He expected to see fear, or perhaps relief. Instead, he saw a flicker of something he couldn't place. A cool, calculating appraisal. The foreman handed him a smudged document. Her name's my parents took the fever last winter. You got a good worker, Mr. Stone. She's quiet, won't cause no trouble. Jedediah folded the paper and turned to the girl. Up close, he could see the fine bones of her face, the intelligence warring with the exhaustion in her eyes. Her hands, though calloused, were small and delicate. He touched the brim of his hat, keeping his voice gentle. Miss Mai. I'm Jedediah Stone. You'll be coming with me to my ranch, he spoke slowly, assuming she understood little English. She watched his face for a long, unnerving moment. Then she spoke, and the world tilted on its axis. Her voice was quiet, her English was perfect, without a trace of an accent, and her words were not those of a frightened child. Mr. Stone. Before we depart, I require clarity on 3 points: the exact nature of my duties, the duration of this contract, and the conditions under which it can be terminated by either party. Jedediah stared, speechless. The foreman, who was counting the money, froze. Every man within earshot turned to look. A Chinese waif, sold for $40, was negotiating terms in the Queen's own English. He finally found his voice. You speak English? Among other things, she replied, her gaze unwavering. You have not answered my questions. Jedediah, shocked out of his pity, found a flicker of respect. This was no ordinary child. Your duties will be general help at the main house. Cooking, cleaning, tending the garden. My wife Eleanor will instruct you. The contract is for 2 years, as stated. As for termination, if your work is unsatisfactory, or if you attempt to run away, you'll be returned here. If I or my wife are unjust, well, I suppose you have little recourse in the law. She seemed to consider this, her small chin held high. And will you be unjust, Mr. Stone? The quiet challenge in her voice hit him harder than a fist. No. On my word, you will be treated fairly. You'll have a warm bed and 3 meals a day. And no man on my ranch will lay a hand on you. Any who tries will answer to me. She studied his face, her dark eyes searching for the truth. Finally, she gave a single, sharp nod. Very well. I will accompany you. The ride to the Stone Ranch was a long one, winding from the dusty flats of Serenity Creek up into the golden, oak-studded hills. Mai sat stiffly on the wagon bench beside him, her small bundle of possessions at her feet. She said little, but Jedediah felt her eyes on everything. She wasn't just watching the scenery, she was memorizing the landmarks, the turns in the road, the position of the sun. Where did you learn to speak like that? He asked, unable to contain his curiosity. My father was a scholar in our village, she said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. He worked with American missionaries before we came here. He believed knowledge was the only wealth that could not be stolen. He was a wise man. He is dead, she stated, a simple fact devoid of self-pity. The finality of it silenced him. He pulled the wagon to a stop on a ridge overlooking his property. Miss Mai, I want to be clear. You are coming to my ranch for honest work. Nothing more. Any man who would harm a child deserves to hang, and I count myself in that. She turned her head and looked at him fully for the first time. The appraisal was gone, replaced by a flicker of something else. Understanding. I believe you, Mr. Stone, she said, her voice barely a whisper. As the sun began to set, they arrived at the ranch. It was a sprawling operation, the main house built of thick timber and river stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around it. A massive barn and several outbuildings dotted the landscape, and in the distance, cattle grazed peacefully. It is large, Mai said softly. Took me 25 years to build, Jedediah replied with a quiet pride that felt hollow even as he said it. Of course, with no children, it'll likely be sold off to strangers when I'm gone. A woman came out onto the porch as they pulled up. Eleanor Stone was a handsome woman of 40, her blonde hair streaked with silver. But the hope had long since faded from her blue eyes, leaving behind a permanent sadness. Jedediah, she called. You're late. Business in town, he said, climbing down and turning to help Mai from the wagon. Eleanor, this is Mai. She'll be helping around the house. Eleanor's eyes widened as she took in the girl's ragged state. Good heavens, child! You're nothing but skin and bone. The foreman said she's a hard worker, Jedediah began. Nonsense, Eleanor cut him off, her voice taking on a brisk energy he hadn't heard in years. She moved toward Mai, her hands fluttering. We'll put her in the spare room upstairs. Come along, dear. Let's get you a hot bath and a proper meal before you fade away completely. As Eleanor led Mai inside, her arm protectively around the girl's thin shoulders, Jedediah watched from the porch. He had thought his wife would be pleased with the help, but this was different. It was as if a long-dormant part of her had suddenly awakened. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Mai was everything the foreman had promised and more. She was intelligent, efficient, and learned every task with astonishing speed. But it was her effect on Eleanor that was most profound. His wife began to smile again. She taught Mai her own mother's recipes, showed her how to arrange wildflowers, and in the evenings, she read to her from the novels she had long since put away. Jedediah, too, found himself drawn to the girl's quiet intensity. One evening, he found her in his study, staring at the books that lined the walls. Can you read them? He asked. Some, she replied. My father taught me the characters, but I know only a few hundred of your words. What if you could learn them all? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a hunger he recognized. You would teach me. I would, he said. And so, their evenings changed. After the chores were done, Mai would join him in his study. He taught her to read and write, and to his surprise, he found she had a brilliant mind for numbers. She grasped the complexities of the ranch ledgers, asking sharp questions about profit margins, feed costs, and market fluctuations. "Why do you want to know all this?" he asked one night. She looked at him with an unnerving seriousness. "My father said that in this country, a person's worth is measured in dollars. I wish to understand the measurement." The words chilled him. This child had seen a side of the world he could barely imagine. As autumn deepened, the first sign of trouble appeared. A new ranch hand, a swaggering young man named Caleb, began to watch Mai with a proprietary air. One afternoon, he cornered her by the stables. "Getting mighty comfortable here, ain't you?" Caleb sneered, blocking her path. "Maybe you're looking for a different kind of work. One that's more friendly." "Let me pass, Caleb," Mai said, her voice low and steady. "Not till you give me a smile," he said, reaching for her arm. He never saw the iron bucket she was carrying. She swung it in a low, vicious arc that connected squarely with his kneecap. Caleb howled in pain and dropped to the ground, clutching his leg. "I do not smile on command," she said, stepping over him without a second glance. When Jedediah heard what had happened, he confronted Caleb. "Pack your things. You're done here." "But Mr. Stone, the foreign girl, she attacked me." "You're lucky she didn't do worse," Jedediah said, his hand resting on the Colt at his hip. "You have 10 minutes. That night, as Jedediah worked on his accounts, Mai came to his study. She stood silently in the doorway until he looked up. "Mr. Stone," she began, her voice tight. "I was not entirely truthful with you when we met." He put down his pen. "Go on." "My father, he did not just work with missionaries. In Serenity Creek, he kept the books for a powerful man, Mr. Fang. He controls the labor contracts and other businesses in the Chinese Quarter." Jedediah felt his blood run cold. He'd heard of Fang, a man who ruled through fear and influence. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Caleb has gone back to town. He will be angry and looking for revenge. He might go to Mr. Fang. And there is something Mr. Fang wants from me." She hesitated. "Before my father died, he had me memorize the contents of a certain ledger. A record of payments Mr. Fang has made to important men in this county. Sheriffs, judges." Jedediah stared at her, the scale of the danger settling over him like a shroud. "He thinks you have this ledger." "He does not know what I have," she corrected. "But he knows my father trusted me. He will assume I possess something that could harm him. He does not like loose ends." The attack came a week later, under the cover of a moonless night. It wasn't a raid for cattle, it was a silent, purposeful assault. 10 men, led by Caleb, rode toward the house. But Mai, who slept with the senses of a hunted animal, heard the muffled hoofbeats first. She flew to Jedediah and Eleanor's room. "Riders coming." "No lights." Jedediah was instantly awake, grabbing the rifle he kept by his bed. He woke his most trusted hands while Eleanor and Mai barricaded the doors and windows. The siege began. Shots splintered the wooden walls of the house. "Stone!" Caleb's voice yelled from the darkness. "Send out the girl. Fang wants what she stole. Give her to us, and we'll leave you in peace." "Go to hell!" Jedediah roared back, firing into the night. The fight was desperate. Jedediah's men were outnumbered, but they were defending their home. In the midst of the chaos, Jedediah saw Mai, not hiding, but moving from window to window, her small face grimly determined, pointing out the attackers' positions with a strategist's cool eye. After an hour, there was a lull. "Stone!" Caleb yelled again. "We've got kerosene. We'll burn you to the ground. Send her out." Eleanor was sobbing quietly in the corner, but Mai walked over to Jedediah, her expression resolute. "There is another way," she said. "What are you talking about?" "They want a ledger I do not have in my possession," she said. "But they also want me silenced." They believe I am a threat. She took a deep breath. Tell them you will trade my life for the safety of your ranch. Absolutely not. Jedediah snarled. You misunderstand, she said, her dark eyes boring into his. You will agree to their terms. You will bring me out onto the porch. You will appear to argue with me. Then you will shoot me. Jedediah recoiled as if struck. Have you lost your mind? You will use a cartridge with no bullet, only powder and wadding. A blank. I have seen them used in traveling shows. It will be loud, and in the dark, they will see the flash. I will fall. You will curse them for making you do it and throw a small, leather-bound book out into the yard. Your own account book will do. Then you will demand they leave your land. They will have what they came for, a book they believe is the ledger, and my silence, confirmed by their own eyes. It was the plan of a desperate genius. It was insane. It was their only hope. 10 minutes later, Jedediah dragged a seemingly struggling Mai onto the front porch. Here she is, you bastards, he yelled, his voice thick with staged fury. You've left me no choice. He raised his pistol. Mai screamed. The gun roared, its flash lighting up the night. Mai collapsed onto the porch boards, limp. There! Jedediah bellowed into the darkness, his heart hammering against his ribs. Are you satisfied? He hurled one of his old ledgers into the dirt. Now take it and get off my land before I kill every last one of you. In the stunned silence, Caleb and another man crept forward. They saw my still form, snatched the book, and retreated. Moments later, Jedediah and his men heard the sound of horses riding away. Inside, he knelt beside Mai. Her eyes fluttered open. Did it work? She whispered. Jedediah couldn't speak. He simply gathered the frail, brilliant, terrifyingly brave child into his arms. That night, something shifted. Mai was no longer a hired girl. She was their daughter. The adoption was a formality. In their hearts, it was already done. Years passed. The ranch changed. At Mai's urging, they began to take in other children, orphans, and runaways from the desperate streets of Serenity Creek and San Francisco. They gave them a home, an education, and a trade. The silent ranch filled with the noise and life Jedediah and Eleanor had always craved. Mai, now a young woman, was the heart of it all. She managed the finances with a skill that doubled the ranch's profits, but her true gift was with the children. She saw the same fear and intelligence in them she'd once had, and she knew exactly how to nurture one and soothe the other. One afternoon, Jedediah, now gray-haired and walking with a slight limp, stood with Mai on the porch, watching a new wagon arrive with 3 scared-looking children. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. That day in the hiring hall. Regret it, he chuckled, his eyes crinkling. Mai, that was the best $40 I ever spent. I went looking for a hired hand, and I found a daughter, a legacy, and a purpose I was too blind to see for myself. She smiled, a rare, brilliant smile that transformed her face. My father was wrong, she said. Knowledge isn't the only wealth that can't be stolen. Oh. So is love, she said, looking out at the sprawling ranch, at the children playing in the yard, at the life they had all built together from the ashes of despair. The kind you choose to give away. It's the only thing that grows the more you spend it. As the sun set over the Sierra Nevada mountains, bathing the valley in a warm, golden light, Jedediah Stone looked at the family he had never expected and knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that he was the richest man in all of the land.